Okay, for the next presentations, we have Dr. Seow Ling from Universiti Tunku Abdul Rahman, Kampar, Malaysia. Hi, Dr. O, are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, so please start sharing your screen. And Dr. O, okay, today is going to share with us her finding about task conflict in the workplace settings. All right, so Dr. O, if you are ready, then shall pass the floor to you, Dr. O.
Okay, so thank you, Dr. Tan, and very good afternoon to all of you. So I think without further ado, I will start my presentation today. Okay, so we know that job performance is always a hot topic to study, especially for IO psychology. This is the question that we keep on asking ourselves, how to help the organization to improve their employee performance. But then when the time that we talk about job performance, generally it can be divided into these two components. One we call in-role, another one we call extra-role. So in-role performance is referred to the task that formally stated in the job description that the employee must perform. But there is another form of job performance we call extra-role performance. It's referred to positive behavior that were not stated formally in the job description. But we know that if our employee perform all these mentioned positive behavior, it will definitely contribute a significant impact on the organization's success. So one of the extra role performance is also named as organization citizenship behavior. In short form, we call OCB. So if the employee is high in OCB, they will tend to help the other new employee, although that is not required formally. They will also attend the function that are not demanded, but then it will help the company to improve their image. They will also obeying the company rule and regulation, even though there is no one watching them. So by performing all this positive behavior, we know that it will able to contribute to the enhancement of the social and psychological content that will support task performance. In other words, if they have all this positive behavior, it will definitely help the employee to perform their very best in their work. But then in the workplace today, we know that it's impossible for us as an individual to work alone. We need colleagues to support us and work in a group. But unfortunately, working with others in the group without encountering conflict is not always easy. And statistics show that managers have spent about 38% of their time just to manage the workplace conflict. In other words, it's about 3 hours a day just to solve the conflict happen among the colleagues. And also the unsolved conflict is responsible for at least 50% of the resignation. Okay, so the question here is conflict always bad to the organization? So when we look at the literature review, we found that there are different results shown. So some studies show that yes, when conflict happen, the OCB behavior will decrease. So it will affect the job performance. But there are also studies found that when conflict happen, OCB will increase. Okay, but there were also studies found that task conflict are not contribute any impact on the OCB behavior. Okay, so whether the effect of the conflict happen in the workplace is whether will contribute positive or negative impact to the organization outcome. Actually, it depends on what kind of output that you are measuring. Are you measuring OCB at the individual level or at the group level? And is there any potential present moderator? Okay, so we are going to talk about the outcome first. Okay, just now we talked about OCB behavior, right? So it can be divided in both levels, individual or group level. So when conflict happen in the workplace, we know that it can be very different. Different type of individual, they will react differently toward the conflict. Okay, and also although that individual in the same group, they might react very differently from their group member. Okay, and that's why that when we look at this outcome, we should consider in both levels. Other than that, whether the conflict happen in the workplace will lead to the negative outcome or positive outcome is also depend on how the supervisor handle it. So if the supervisor are able to handle it by using appropriate strategy, it would help to minimize the negative effect. But if, let's say, the supervisor using the inappropriate conflict handling strategy, it might make the situation become even worse and turn to more negative impact. So therefore, in this study, we would like to find out if conflict happen in the workplace, what if the supervisor using different type of the conflict handling strategy, would it help to turn the situation? So we are using cross-sectional study. Location is in Malaysia. So we've been off about 467 employees from 47 groups. Okay. So these are the instruments used to measure. So these are the results that found. So as you can see in the diagram itself. So I will go through more detail. Okay. So as you can see here, we have both group and individual level. So different type of strategy, some strategy work in both levels. It can help to weaken the negative impact at group and individual level. But then there are some that only work at group level, but not for individual level. We will talk about the first one. Okay. So if let's say the supervisor using this conflict handling strategy we call problem solving. Okay. Problem solving meaning that they will try to solve the conflict using cooperation method. They will try to reach the solution. Both parties also agree with it. So at now, our study found that this is the strategy that work for both group and individual level. The reason is because when the supervisor using this approach to solve conflict, the employee feel that their interest as viewpoint has been listened, and also they feel that they have sense of control. So that's why it will motivate the employee to go extra mile to solve the conflict together with the supervisor. But then unfortunately, problem solving conflict handling strategy take time. Because it takes time for both parties to sit down together and reach a solution that can be accepted for both parties. So there are another method we call compromising. Compromising is where that both parties also have to sacrifice certain parts. They will take middle ground. They will make mutual acceptable decision for both parties. Okay. So as you can see in the table, it won't work for group level, but then it works for individual level. So for individual, if conflict happen, our supervisor use this method, we will feel that our supervisor concerned about us. Our welfare is considered. Okay. So based on the theory, we also mentioned as human, we generally will return kind action if someone treat us nicely. So that's why OCB increase. But then why not in group level? Okay, because when you are in the group, you will discuss things together with your other colleague. You will find that this method will not be the best solution. It will only help you to solve short-term issue, but then not long-term. So that's why it will not work in the worst. Although it's not the best, but then it's not the worst. So that's why no significant result found. So we go to the next one, we call yielding. This is where that the supervisor will sacrifice his or her own need or interest or goal just to fulfill the employee. So this strategy work in group level, but then not at the individual level. So why? So in group level, perhaps that we can explain it through social exchange theory, because the group itself, they also realize that their rights and welfare be respected. So as a group, if let's say their supervisor listen to them, okay, sacrifice their supervisor own interest and goal to fulfill the employee one, they are very happy with it. But then not at individual level. So this is quite contrasting with our speculation. So we are trying to find out the reason why. So I think one of the explanation can be is Malaysia itself. We score a very low score in long-term orientation cultural value, meaning that most of the time Malaysia focus on achieving quick result. Okay, so if let's say conflict happen, then your supervisor fulfill all your need and also all your demand. So perhaps that the employee will think that, okay, so I don't have to work hard to get anything. So I will limit myself to working hard for the organization. Then another method we call avoiding. Avoiding meaning that if conflict happen, then the supervisor will try to avoid themselves or ignore the conflict at all and prefer to physically absent or remain silent. So this method work in individual level, but then not group level. So at group level, because if supervisor using this method, and the group will think that the supervisor not dealing with it. Okay, so that's why no significant result found. But then at individual level, it worked. Okay, because in Malaysia we are consider law in individualistic culture. So we as an employee, we have strong or high emotional dependency with each others, and harmony is our goal. Okay, so we feel that offended if we try to bring up the conflict on the table. Okay, so that's why sometimes award will be a good way as well to deal with conflict. Maybe we will give some time to the person to just calm down. The last one is forcing. Forcing meaning that the supervisor will force the employee to listen to them, okay, without thinking about the employee side. So he worked in the group level, but then not in the individual level. So for group level, perhaps that, but then you look at here is a negative. So negative meaning that if the employee use forcing, it will make the situation become even worse. Because as a group, if you force them to listen, then they will increase anxiety, depression, and so on. And they feel that their voice is not listening and they are not taken care by the supervisor. So this method cannot be used when you are dealing conflict in the group. But then for individual, no significant relationship found. Perhaps I think Malaysia is high in power distance. So the distribution power is unequal. So we also, as an employee, we are expected to be told what to do and accept the supervisor decision without question. So that's why using forcing, although that is not the best one, but then it won't turn the situation become worse. So that's why no significant result found. So as you can see in the table, individual and also group level OCB can be very different because both are also were influenced by the different causes and lead to the different outcome. So therefore, the conflict management training should be developed to tailor to our own culture that can prevent any negative impact of the conflict happen in the future. Yeah, I think that's all for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. O. All right, so okay, so let me turn on. Okay, so participant, you may now unmute yourself and start your camera, okay, to communicate with our speaker, Dr. O. So let us let Dr. O to take a sip of water first. Okay, meanwhile, because I see that our number of participants is increasing, so I assume, okay, there will be some newcomers. Okay, so for participants who just joined our colloquium, okay, kindly refer to the chat box. Okay, there will be a link for you to sign in. Okay, kindly complete the sign in form if you have just joined this meeting. Okay, so any questions for, okay, we have a first question from Dr. Wustari. All right, a very good research findings. What type of supervisor support that can reduce the conflict? Are these behavior will also different in each culture? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the question. I think different culture, we will get different type of result. So for example, in Korea itself, if you use forcing, then it will increase productivity, but then not for US. But then unfortunately, currently in Asians, not much study has been carried out. So I do believe that culture is one of the key, that if you carry out this kind of study in different culture, you will definitely get a different type of result. So what kind of support? In my study, I think I focus mainly in the way how to deal with the conflict, because there are different type of strategy when conflict happen. How can you deal with it differently? Okay. But there are also other issue I think we can consider. For example, trust, and also commitment. That these are the things that can be included.
Okay, thank you, Dr. O. And then we have another question from the chat box. May I ask, how do you operationalize the group and individual matching in assessing the task conflict? Thank you.
You mean using, okay. So maybe we can refer to the instruments. So to measure conflict, I was using this skill, but then to measure the group and individual level, we have two different skills.
Thanks, Dr. Tan, and thanks, Dr. Seow Ling. My questions here actually, I'm asking because you are using dyadic approach, right? So this means in this case here, how do you classify that, say, this number of the subordinate or follower are following this so-called this leader? So then you measure the group. So how do you operationalize this part here? So that's my question.
Okay, I'm not using the two-way method. I'm using cross-sectional. Okay, so I'm not pairing them together.
Okay, noted. Thanks. Then may I ask one more question? So in this case here, when you conduct your studies, right? So do you look into the kind of tasks that all these participants or these respondents are involved? So for instance, some might be doing another sort of administrative role, while some will be doing more like the planning role. So do you classify based on the task that the nature of tasks that you are doing, or you just generally generalize all the data collections?
I'm using generalized. I'm not classify them into different level, but then it's a good suggestion. I think we can do another moderator, like three-way moderator, to find it out later on. Would the level or the different tasks will affect the result?
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for the questions. So yeah, then another question from Amira. Okay, so she asked, may I know if you collect data on the industry the participants come from, do you think that there will be differences in results across industry?
Yes, my answer is yes. Because different organization, they have different culture. So because of that also, you can see that we only use government sector employee in our case. Because in Malaysia, they are still practicing bureaucratic structure. So definitely if we look at different organization culture, the result might be different. So this is something can be done as well. So we can see that there are still a lot of things that can be done.
Okay, so Amira, if you have further follow-up questions, okay, yeah, feel free to let us know, yeah. Meanwhile, may I request Dr. O to show your slide number 13? Yeah, so that our participants, they can take a look at the result. So ladies and gentlemen, any questions for Dr. O?
Yeah, Dr. O, may I just clarify again? So in this case here, the level 1 here, individual level, you are collecting it from the individual civil servant. And then how about the group level in terms of this two measure here? You are collecting...
Identify based on their group. So for example, this 4, 6, 7 employee, right? They also can be classified into group. So for the OCB at group level, we will group them in the group and do the analysis. But then for the individual one, we will measure them as an individual.
So that's mean the respondent from each of all these questions there here, there are some answer by individual, but there are some answer by group.
Yeah, because we are using different instrument. So the item are different. So the one that measure group level and individual level are from two different questions.
Okay, so I understand that. So in this case here, you have two group of respondents. One are individual, the other ones are group, and each of this group here, they are using different sets of you measure them using different sets of questions then.
Okay. Total is this number 467, and they can be classified into 47 group. So when I measure individual, I will measure this 467. But when I measure the group, I will group their result based on their group. So which means 47 group. So I run this analysis.
So in a way, you have collected 467 responses. So out from this 467, you then further subdivide them into groups. That's why you have the 47 group here. And then these two classification here is based on different sets of measures. Okay, so after that, then you run the analysis. So that's why you are using multiple hierarchical regressions to run this. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, so I think we still have time for one last questions. Okay, anyone would like to grab this opportunity? Let's see, anyone would like to take this opportunity? I think Dr. O, okay, your model is a little bit too complex. They need some time to digest. Okay, so I think I will take the advantage lah. So Dr. O, okay, I understand that it is not easy to collect the data. Can you share with us, okay, if you want to do this kind of the analysis that investigate the individual and also the group level, what are the challenges that you encounter and how you overcome it? Also, is whether you have any advice, okay, for us who would like to engage in this kind of the research.
I think first of all, it's not easy to get an approval and also the cooperation from the organizations because sometimes it's also not easy for us to identify group. So, but then I'm considered lucky because I can get a cooperation from the government sector. Okay, so I think the challenges maybe in future is when the time that we want to distribute this question into the private sector. Yeah, I think might not that easy.
Okay, thank you, Dr. O, for the sharings and also the advice. So yeah, I guess here comes to the end for the Dr. O presentation. Okay, once again, thank you, Dr. O.
Thank you, Dr. Tan.